Star Wars has been around for nearly 50 years, and in that time, it's managed to contradict itself in ways that are honestly impressive. We're talking plot holes so dumb, they span entire trilogies, break their own rules, and somehow nobody in a room full of writers caught them. So today I'm breaking down the absolute dumbest ones, starting with a classic that every single fan has noticed, Leia's impossible memory. Beautiful, kind, but sad. That's how Leia describes her mother to Luke in Return of the Jedi. It's a genuine, warm, deeply personal memory. She's not guessing, she's not speculating. She remembers this woman. She remembers her face. Cool. But then Revenge of the Sith happens. Padme Amidala dies minutes after giving birth. Minutes. Leia never opened her eyes to a living mother. There was no childhood. There were no quiet moments together. Padme flatlined before Leia could form a single conscious thought, let alone a detailed memory of someone being beautiful, kind, but sad. So what exactly is Leia remembering? Fans have thrown everything at this one. Force impressions, constructed memories from her adoptive parents on Alderaan, some kind of emotional residue from the womb. And honestly, some of those explanations are creative. But here's the thing, Lucasfilm has never confirmed a single one of them. There is zero official explanation for how Leia has a vivid childhood memory of a woman who died the day she was born. This is the contradiction that spans 2 entire trilogies and directly reshapes how you understand one of the saga's most important characters, and it's never been addressed. But if you think a broken memory is bad, wait until you see what happens when lightsabers forget their own rules. Obi-Wan's droid amnesia. This one drives people absolutely insane, and honestly, I get it. In A New Hope, Obi-Wan sits down across from R2-D2 and says, "I don't seem to remember ever owning a droid. Just a casual throwaway line. No big deal." Except then, the prequels happened. Across 3 entire films, R2-D2 is Anakin Skywalker's constant companion. Everywhere Anakin goes, R2 goes. And who is standing right next to Anakin for literally years? Obi-Wan Kenobi. They fight together, they fly together, R2 saves their lives multiple times. Obi-Wan absolutely, undeniably knows this droid. So what happened? Did he just forget? Did 19 years on Tatooine melt his brain? Here's the thing, fans have constructed what I like to call the lawyer defense. And it goes like this. Obi-Wan said he never remembered owning a droid. He didn't say he'd never seen one. R2 was Anakin's droid, not his. So technically, if you squint hard enough and read the line like a contract negotiation, Obi-Wan isn't lying. He's just being the most pedantic man in the galaxy. And look, it works. Barely. If you treat Obi-Wan like he's choosing every word with surgical precision while sitting in a sand hut talking to a farm boy, sure. But nobody talks like that. And nobody hears, "I don't remember ever owning a droid," and thinks, "Ah yes, a precise legal distinction about property rights." You hear that line and you think, the old man has no idea who this little blue trash can is. The real answer? George Lucas hadn't written the prequels yet. That line was never meant to hold up under 3 more movies of R2 screen time. But no official Lucasfilm statement has ever confirmed the ownership technicality reading. It's a fan-built escape hatch, and it's held together with duct tape and good intentions. But at least Obi-Wan only forgot a droid. Wait until you hear about a character who remembers something that literally never happened. Lightsabers and blood. Star Wars fans love bringing up the cauterization thing. You know the one. Lightsabers are so hot, they instantly seal any wound they create. No blood, no mess, just a clean cut and a screaming victim. It's one of those well-actually facts that gets thrown around constantly as proof that Star Wars has airtight internal logic, except it doesn't. Because characters bleed from lightsaber wounds, on screen. In the actual movies, the cantina scene in A New Hope, Obi-Wan slices off Ponda Baba's arm and there's blood pooling on the floor. Literal blood from a lightsaber wound, the weapon that supposedly makes bleeding impossible. And that's not a one-time thing. Multiple moments across the franchise show injuries that don't behave the way the lightsaber's cauterize rule says they should. Sometimes the wound is perfectly clean and sealed. Sometimes there's blood. Zero consistency. Here's the thing. Nobody at Lucasfilm has ever formally codified the cauterization rule. There's no production note that says lightsabers always cauterize, no exceptions. There's no creator commentary explaining why some wounds bleed and others don't. The rule that fans treat as gospel, it was never officially a rule. So what happened? Probably the simplest explanation. Different films, different directors, different makeup departments, and nobody kept a master document on lightsaber wound physics, which is honestly hilarious when you think about it. A franchise that tracks hyperspace routes and midi-chlorian counts couldn't keep straight whether laser swords make you bleed. It never breaks a single plot. It never changes a character's fate. But once you see it, you will never unsee it. And speaking of things that don't add up when you look too closely. The Millennium Falcon has a propulsion problem that's way harder to explain away. The Falcon's broken hyperdrive. Let's talk about the most important ship malfunction in movie history that somehow doesn't matter 5 minutes later. In A New Hope, Imperial forces board the Millennium Falcon and disable its hyperdrive. This is treated as a big deal. The Empire specifically targets the hyperdrive because without it, the Falcon can't jump to light speed. It can't outrun Star Destroyers. It can't deliver the Death Star plans to the Rebel base. Tactically, this is a checkmate move. The Imperials aren't amateurs. They know exactly what disabling that system means. But then, the Falcon just leaves. Han and the crew escape, deliver the plans, and the entire third act of the movie happens. The trench run, the medal ceremony, all of it. None of that works if the Falcon doesn't get away, which means this single escape sequence is load-bearing for the entire film. So how did they pull it off? Here's where it gets complicated. The most common defense is that disabled hyperdrive doesn't mean disabled engines. The hyperdrive handles faster than light travel. Sublight engines handle normal propulsion. If only the hyperdrive was knocked out, the Falcon could still fly, still maneuver, still technically escape at slower speeds. And honestly, that tracks. It makes mechanical sense within the Star Wars universe. But here's the thing, nobody ever confirms this on screen. No character says good thing they only hit the hyperdrive. No dialogue clarifies what system survived. The movie just moves forward and hopes you don't ask questions. And look, the defense is genuinely plausible. Sublight engines and hyperdrives are clearly separate systems throughout the franchise. Empire Strikes Back proves that when the Falcon limps to Bespin, without hyperdrive, but still flies perfectly fine otherwise. But plausible and confirmed are two very different things, and for a plot point this critical, probably fine is doing a lot of heavy lifting. But if you think an unexplained escape is frustrating, wait until we get to a droid who knows everything about the fall of the Republic and just never mentions it. The droid memory double standard. Let's talk about one of the most baffling HR decisions in galactic history. At the end of Revenge of the Sith, Bail Organa does something completely reasonable. He orders C-3PO's memory wiped. Clean slate, factory reset. And honestly, fair enough. 3PO is a walking liability. The droid cannot stop talking. He narrates his own anxiety in real time. If you needed to hide the existence of 2 secret children from a galaxy-spanning Sith regime, the absolute last droid you'd trust with that information is the one who treats every conversation like an open mic night. So wiping 3PO makes perfect sense. No argument there. But then Bail Organa looks at R2-D2, Anakin Skywalker's personal astromech droid, the little blue barrel that spent the entire Clone Wars glued to the most dangerous Jedi in the galaxy, and just leaves him alone, full memory, completely intact. Every file, every recording, every mission log from years of classified operations just sitting there in his memory banks like an unlocked phone at a crime scene. Here's the thing, the strongest defense anyone has come up with is that R2 didn't directly witness Anakin's near death on Mustafar. He wasn't there for the lava, the dismemberment, the full transformation into Vader. And okay, that's technically true. But let's do a quick audit of what R2 absolutely did witness. He was present for Anakin and Padme's secret relationship. He flew alongside Anakin in countless battles during the Clone Wars. He was on missions with both Anakin and Obi-Wan that involved highly classified Republic intelligence. He knew the twins existed, he knew where they came from, but sure, he missed the lava part. So apparently that's fine. The practical result of this decision is genuinely absurd. R2-D2 spends the entire original trilogy rolling around with Luke Skywalker, the secret son of Darth Vader, carrying a complete archive of prequel-era secrets in his head. Nobody ever thinks to ask. Nobody plugs him in and says, hey, what do you know about the Clone Wars? Luke never gets a heads up. Obi-Wan never pulls R2 aside. The most important intelligence asset in the rebellion is beeping away right there, and everyone just treats him like a fancy Swiss Army knife. Bail Organa ran a background check on one droid and gave the other a free pass because he missed one day of work. That's not a security protocol. That's a coin flip. But at least the droid's memory problems are accidental. The next plot hole involves a battle station that had every tactical advantage in the galaxy and still managed to fumble it. The Holdo maneuver. Let's talk about the single most visually stunning moment in the entire sequel trilogy. Admiral Holdo turns her cruiser around, punches it to light speed, and rips Snoke's flagship in half. The screen goes silent. Black silhouettes against a white shard of light. Every person in the theater held their breath. It is genuinely one of the most beautiful shots in Star Wars history, and it broke everything. Here's the the problem. The second Holdo's ship tears through that mega-class Star Destroyer like tissue paper, every single space battle in the franchise stops making sense. Every single one. Because if a hyperspace jump can be weaponized like that, then the tactical math of the entire galaxy changes overnight. Think about it. The Rebel Alliance spent years fighting a desperate guerrilla war against the Empire. Thousands of pilots died in trench runs, suicide missions, and last stands trying to take down capital ships and superweapons. The Death Star alone required stolen plans, a 1 in a million torpedo shot, and the literal force to destroy. But apparently, all they ever needed was one ship with a hyperdrive and someone willing to point it in the right direction. Why didn't anyone ram a cruiser into the second Death Star? Why didn't the Republic hyperspace ram the Separatist command ship at any point during the Clone Wars? Why didn't anyone do this literally ever in thousands of years of galactic warfare? You don't even need a crewed vessel. Strap a hyperdrive to an asteroid. Autopilot a freighter. The entire concept of a fleet becomes obsolete the moment this tactic exists. The filmmakers knew exactly what they were doing with the visual. Production reporting confirms the sequence was deliberately designed to shock audiences, and it worked. That moment landed like a thunderclap. But here's where it gets complicated. Shocking and internally consistent don't have to be mutually exclusive. You can surprise the audience without detonating a logic bomb that travels backwards through 6 previous films. And the worst part? The movie never addresses it. No character says that shouldn't have worked. No one explains why this is a one-time miracle. No official Lucasfilm policy statement has formally addressed the tactical implications for the broader universe. It just happens. It's gorgeous. And then everyone moves on, like the entire nature of space combat didn't just fundamentally change. The Holdo maneuver isn't a small continuity hiccup. It's a retroactive indictment of every military strategist in the galaxy for the last 10,000 years. But if you think one controversial tactical decision is bad, wait until you see what the Death Star does when it finally reaches the Rebel base. The Death Star's patience. Let me set the scene. The Empire has just demonstrated the most devastating weapon in galactic history, Alderaan. 2 billion people, gone in a single flash. The Death Star can delete a planet from existence in seconds, so it arrives at Yavin 4. The Rebel base is right there. Every leader, every pilot, every scrap of hope the rebellion has is sitting on that moon, and what does the Empire do? They wait. They orbit the gas giant Yavin, slowly rotating into firing position, while the rebels scramble X-Wings, brief their pilots, and launch a full assault on the station. That countdown clock on the tactical display might as well have been labeled, "Time we're giving the enemy to kill us." Here's the thing. The Death Star already proved it can obliterate an entire planet. Yavin 4 is a moon. The weapon that disintegrated Alderaan should treat this like target practice. But instead of firing immediately, the station needs a specific orbital position because the gas giant is in the way. That's the justification. The Death Star can't shoot through a planet. Fine. But that raises an even dumber question. Why did the Empire's navigation team drop out of hyperspace on the wrong side of the gas giant? You have a weapon that ends civilizations. You know exactly where the Rebel base is, Leia told them, and the battle plan is to arrive behind the largest obstacle in the system and slowly drift around it. This is the most powerful military in the galaxy. Thousands of Star Destroyers, legions of TIE fighters, a superweapon that makes planets stop existing, and their grand tactical approach to a stationary target is let's take the scenic route. Nobody suggested exiting hyperspace on the other side for a clear shot. Not one officer, not Tarkin, the supposed military genius, the man who authorized Alderaan's destruction partly as a flex couldn't check the approach vector. This isn't some minor tactical footnote. This single decision costs the Empire everything. Those extra minutes are exactly what the rebels needed. Without that window, Luke never makes the trench run. The torpedoes never reach the exhaust port. The Death Star never explodes. The entire original trilogy hinges on the Empire choosing the slowest possible route to a target they already had coordinates for. Even Lucasfilm knows this gets scrutinized. Pablo Hidalgo, a Lucasfilm Story Group member, has publicly engaged with lists of alleged Star Wars plot holes, picking apart which hold up and which are misunderstandings. But no direct official rebuttal to the Death Star's orbital patience has ever surfaced. Because what would they say? Grand Moff Tarkin preferred the view from the far side. It's a beautiful sequence, one of the most iconic in cinema. The tension, the music, Luke trusting the Force. It works perfectly as a movie, but as a military operation, this is the kind of decision that gets you court-martialed, assuming anyone survived to file the paperwork. But if the Death Star's patience cost the Empire a superweapon, wait until you hear about the plot hole that broke an entire trilogy's logic in a single scene. Palpatine somehow returned. Let's talk about the big one. The one that broke the internet, broke the fandom, and arguably broke the sequel trilogy itself. The Rise of Skywalker opens with a crawl that essentially says Palpatine is dead, and then immediately cuts to Palpatine speaking, alive, on a hidden Sith world called Exegol, commanding a fleet of Star Destroyers, each one equipped with its own planet-killing super laser. The Emperor, who was thrown down a reactor shaft, exploded, and then had the entire Death Star blow up around him, is just back. No build-up across the previous two films, no foreshadowing, just back. And look, I know this is the easy target. Somehow Palpatine returned has become a meme so overused, it's practically a greeting at this point. But here's the thing, there actually is an explanation, and it's more thought out than most people realize. The Rise of Skywalker Visual Dictionary lays out that a Sith cult called the Sith Eternal spent decades on Exegol, secretly constructing Palpatine's fleet, not weeks, not months, decades. Using a combination of occult Sith technology and conventional Imperial engineering, this cult was building an armada underneath the events of the entire original trilogy. While Luke was training with Yoda, while the Rebellion was blowing up Death Stars, while the Empire was collapsing, the Sith Eternal was quietly assembling the largest military force the galaxy had ever seen. The plan was always in motion. Palpatine always had a contingency. And honestly, as an in-universe explanation, that's not terrible. It gives the fleet a defensible origin. It connects to established Sith lore about cheating death and transferring consciousness. It frames Palpatine as the ultimate long-game strategist, which is consistent with his character across 6 previous films. If you read the visual dictionary entry in isolation, you'd think, okay, that actually tracks. But then you pull back and look at the full picture, and the full picture is where everything falls apart. The Sith Eternal built an armada larger than anything the Empire ever fielded, in secret over decades, on a planet that requires a specific ancient Sith Wayfinder device to even navigate to, and nobody noticed. Not Imperial intelligence, not the Rebellion's spy network that could steal Death Star plans, not the New Republic that governed the galaxy for 30 years after Endor. Not a single person in the entire galaxy stumbled across a fleet of planet-killing Star Destroyers being assembled in the unknown regions. That's the problem. The visual dictionary patches one hole and rips open 3 more, and the fleet isn't even the worst of it. The Rise of Skywalker gives its characters a 16-hour countdown to find Exegol and stop the fleet before it launches. 16 hours. To locate an ancient Wayfinder, navigate to a hidden Sith world, and destroy an entire armada. The entire plot of the movie runs on a ticking clock that feels completely arbitrary, because it is completely arbitrary. Nobody explains why 16 hours. Nobody explains why the fleet can't just launch immediately if it's been ready for decades. Then there's the battle itself. The Resistance arrives at Exegol, and the Final Order's shields are just lowered, without a fight, without a strategic reason. The shields on a fleet of planet-killing warships are simply down so the plot can happen. Resistance fighters charge across the hull of a Star Destroyer on horseback, actual horses, on the surface of a spaceship, in space, and somehow this works. Rey, meanwhile, performs ship repairs at a pace that would make a professional engineering crew weep. Navigation to Exegol requires an ancient Sith artifact, except when it doesn't, because eventually the entire Resistance fleet just kinda shows up anyway. Every solution in this movie exists because the script needs it to exist, not because the universe's rules allow it. Here's where it gets complicated though. No single official statement reconciles all of this. The visual dictionary handles the fleet. Novelizations fill in some character motivation gaps. But the cumulative weight of timing problems, operational impossibilities, and logical shortcuts in the trilogy's finale has never been addressed as a whole. Each individual issue has a defense. Together, they form something that no amount of supplementary material can fully explain away. And I think that's what makes this the #1 spot on this list. It's not just one plot hole, it's a cascade. Every patch creates a new leak. Every explanation demands its own explanation. The sequel trilogy attempted something genuinely ambitious. It tried to bring back the most iconic villain in cinema history, introduce an entirely new threat, and wrap up a 9-film saga all in one movie. That's a massive swing. But ambition and coherence turned out to be mutually exclusive, and the galaxy far, far away has never quite recovered. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.